the Orion Corridor was supposed to be quiet. It was a dead stretch of space, 2 light-years of nothing but dust clouds and the occasional rogue asteroid, but to the VYRKL Empire, it was the most important choke point in the sector. Dozens of star systems lay beyond, systems whose inhabitants had been pacified over centuries of conquest. If anything hostile tried to slip through, this was where it would die. The corridor was a kill zone, a term even the VYRKL didn't use lightly. Across its black expanse hung 12 dreadnoughts, each the length of a city, each bristling with plasma cannons, rail batteries, and enough firepower to strip the atmosphere off a planet. Mines floated between them in invisible lattices, linked by sensor nets. Autonomous defense drones drifted in perfect synchronization, each one armed with weapons scaled to shred a cruiser in a single burst. No ship had ever crossed this gauntlet uninvited. Until now. Contact. The single word cracked through the bridge of the VYRKL Eternal Spear like a whip. Commander Ralvek's crest feathers flared as he turned toward the sensor pit. Repeat. The sensor officer's voice was tight. Confirmed, Commander. 1 vessel. Human. A ripple of murmurs passed through the crew. The word human carried a mix of derision and curiosity. They were a primitive species by galactic standards, latecomers to interstellar travel, recent upstarts whose territory barely spanned a handful of sectors. They had been warned away from the Orion Corridor more than once. But no human warship had ever come this deep. Put it on the main display, Ralvek ordered. The bridge lights dimmed, and the tactical holotable shifted from its usual grid to a live feed. The object appeared a dark silhouette gliding silently through space. No running lights. No transponder signal. It moved as if the void itself were carrying it forward, a shadow sliding over a starfield. For a long moment, no one spoke. "This isn't a freighter," Ralvek said at last. "Mass reading?" 1.2 megatons, the sensor officer replied. His frills trembled. Hull composite is human design, but reinforced with an unknown lattice. Ralvek stared. 1.2 megatons meant dreadnought mass. But the profile was nothing like a dreadnought. No visible fins, no ornate crest or forward banners, none of the ceremonial architecture most species put on a ship that size. It was ugly, brutal, all edges and functional geometry, built to fight, not impress. "Are they broadcasting?" "No, Commander." No hails, no IFF. A low hiss rippled through the bridge crew. Approaching the corridor without broadcasting an identification friend Orpho signal was a challenge. Doing so on a ship of that tonnage was practically an act of war. "Perhaps they are malfunctioning," one officer offered weakly. Ralvek's mandibles clicked. Malfunctioning ships do not fly straight through a mine grid with sublight precision. He watched the screen as the ship drew closer. Every kilometer it crossed brought it deeper into the crossfire range of the kill zone. Still it did not slow. "Transmit warning." Inside the USS Valkyrie, Captain Nathan Briggs stood at the center of the command deck with his arms folded behind him. The man looked like he had been carved out of old stone, tall, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes that never blinked longer than they had to. "Killzone perimeter breached," reported Lieutenant Carla Jenkins, her voice calm despite the tension humming in the air. "Enemy pickets have active targeting locks, but no fire yet." "They're waiting," Briggs said softly, almost to himself. Carla glanced up from her console. "Waiting for what?" "For us to blink." The bridge crew worked in silence, their hands steady even as sweat prickled at their collars. This was no ordinary mission. Each man and woman aboard Valkyrie had been handpicked, not just for skill but for temperament. Volunteers, every one of them, people who had known exactly what they were signing up for. "Helm," Briggs said without looking away from the forward screen. "Bring us dead center into their formation." The helmsman hesitated only a second before replying, "Aye, Captain." The ship's engines pulsed once and then fell back into near silence. No roaring drives, no heat bloom, just the subtle hum of inertia dampeners as the Valkyrie glided forward, straight into the teeth of one of the most fortified ambush zones in known space. "Human vessel," came the translated voice of the VYRKL communications officer, projected across the bridge speakers. You are entering restricted military space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in immediate annihilation. Carla glanced toward Briggs. Sir? No response, Briggs said quietly. Carla nodded once and cut the channel. On the tactical screen, the enemy formation shifted, dreadnoughts fanning out to encircle the human ship. The mines in the corridor armed themselves, glowing faintly like stars being born. Still Valkyrie advanced. Captain, Carla said finally, unable to keep the edge from her voice. At this range, one salvo from those guns will crush us if the shields don't hold. Briggs didn't turn. His eyes stayed on the screen, on the tightening circle of dreadnoughts. If they fire, he said, then we'll find out what this ship can really do. And then, as if the enemy had heard him, the first dreadnought opened fire. The void lit up. A wall of blinding plasma burst from the alien cannons, racing toward the lone human vessel. Brace! Carla shouted. The bridge went still for half a heartbeat. And then the Valkyrie's hull flared gold, a ripple of energy spreading outward as her shields absorbed the full brunt of the attack. The plasma storm washed over her, scattering like water on unbroken glass. When the light faded, the human warship was still there. Unharmed. Briggs allowed himself a thin smile. Now, he said quietly, they know what they're dealing with. He turned toward the weapons officer. Lock targets on the nearest dreadnought. The crew looked at him, no one breathing. Then Briggs gave the order that would set the galaxy alight. Open fire. For one breathless moment after Captain Briggs gave the order, the Valkyrie seemed to hang in the void, silent as a blade before the strike. Then the ship came alive. Magnetic coils screamed through the hull as the forward rail batteries charged. The lights on the bridge dimmed automatically, power rerouted to weapons. The crew barely had time to brace before the first shot fired. The sound was not a roar but a low, shuddering thump that reverberated through the decks, the sound of a slug the size of a shuttle being hurled at a fraction of light speed. The tactical screen flashed. Direct hit. The lead VYRKL dreadnought's shields barely had time to flare before the slug cored through them, punching straight through the forward reactor compartment. For a moment the ship just stopped, its dry plume sputtering. Then a silent blossom of plasma ripped through its hull. The dreadnought went dark, venting atmosphere and burning debris into space. The crew of the Valkyrie didn't cheer. They didn't have time. Multiple return fires. Carla shouted. The Killzone lit up as every other dreadnought fired at once, a synchronized wall of blue plasma converging on their position. Brace for impact. The first barrage struck Valkyrie's shields like a sledgehammer. The entire ship shuddered, gravity compensators struggling to keep the crew from being thrown. Sparks showered from an overloaded console on the starboard side. Shields holding, reported Ensign Vega, his voice taut, but we just lost 15% integrity. Reroute power from aft reserves, Briggs said without missing a beat. We'll worry about running later. Another tremor rocked the deck as more plasma struck. Enemy drones are moving in, Carla called. 70+ contacts. They're forming an attack net. Let them, Briggs replied. Helm, roll us 90 degrees and line up spinal cannon on target 2. The ship rolled in perfect precision, its massive frame rotating like a predator bearing its fangs. Firing. The spinal cannon beam was nearly invisible, a tight, pencil-thin lance of energy, but its effect was instant. The second dreadnought's port side sheared open as though a god had drawn a line through it with a scalpel. It broke apart in a silent explosion, spinning away into the void. The bridge crew exchanged quick glances. 2 dreadnoughts down. But the aliens were adapting. Commander Ralvek, cried the sensor officer aboard the surviving flagship, the human ship is cutting through us one by one. Ralvek gripped the arms of his command throne. Send the drones to swarm them. Overload the mines, detonate proximity charges manually. The Killzone erupted in white light as dozens of mines self-detonated, forcing the Valkyrie to weave through expanding fireballs of plasma and shrapnel. Evasive pattern Delta 7. Briggs barked. The inertial dampeners whined as the ship juked left, rolled, then cut hard upward relative to the ecliptic plane. One mine exploded too close. The deck lurched violently as alarms screamed. Portside armor breached on Deck 9. Vega shouted. Fire suppression active. Casualties reported. Briggs' jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Seal the deck and keep firing. They want us scared, don't give them the satisfaction. The railguns roared again, taking down 2 drones in a single burst. Carla's hands flew over her console. Sir, 3 of their destroyer-class escorts are breaking off and vectoring for a pincer maneuver. If they flank us, they won't get the chance. Launch all strike drones. Tiny hatches opened along Valkyrie's hull, releasing a cloud of human-built combat drones. Unlike the VYRKL's mindless interceptors, these were semi-autonomous, each equipped with a miniature rail spike and adaptive targeting AI. The bridge screens filled with dozens of micro-battles as drones ripped into one another, space turning into a lethal dance of fire and steel. Then came the worst blow yet. Direct hit. Vega shouted as the ship rocked again, this time harder than before. Starboard shield generator offline. Red emergency lights flooded the bridge. Get it back, Briggs said sharply. Working on it, sir, but if we take another volley on that side, then we don't let them shoot that side. Briggs' tone cut like a knife. Helm, bring us about. Give them the port side and fire all port batteries. The ship swung, thrusters firing in a coordinated ballet, and unleashed a storm of kinetic fire from its secondary guns. The nearest VYRKL cruiser tried to dodge but was too slow. The slugs tore through its midsection, venting half its crew into space. On the alien flagship, Ralvek slammed a clawed hand onto the arm of his throne. This is madness, he snarled. One ship cannot do this. Shall we call for reinforcements? Asked his second-in-command. Ralvek's frills flattened. By the time they arrive, we will be dust. He turned back toward the hologram of the human vessel. Target their engines. Disable them if possible. They must not be allowed to escape. Inside Valkyrie, Carla suddenly shouted, multiple torpedo locks. All converging on our aft quarter. Countermeasures now. Briggs snapped. Flares and decoys spat from the ship's launch bays, filling space with false sensor images. Most of the torpedoes swerved off course, but not all. A single plasma warhead made it through, detonating just meters from the hull. The explosion rocked the ship like a hammer blow. We've lost power to sections 12 through 16. Vega yelled. Atmosphere venting on Deck 13. Carla's voice rose over the alarms. They're trying to cripple us. Not today. Briggs' tone was low and cold. Spinal cannon, full charge. Target their flagship. The charge time felt like an eternity. Alarms wailed, sparks rained from a blown conduit, the crew fought to stabilize the ship and then the cannon fired. A white-hot beam lanced across the void, punching through the flagship's forward shields as if they weren't there. The blast carved through the entire bow section, severing weapons decks, crew quarters, and the primary command spire. Ralvek was thrown against his restraints as half his bridge exploded around him. Commander, we must retreat, cried what remained of his bridge crew. Ralvek stared at the image of the human ship, its black hull scarred but still advancing. Fall back, he said at last, bitterly. All surviving vessels, fall back. And so they did. On the Valkyrie's bridge, the sensor display cleared as the remaining enemy ships broke formation and began a full retreat. The Killzone, once an impenetrable wall of firepower, was a graveyard of glowing wrecks and debris. Enemy fleet strength down to 30%, Carla said, still catching her breath. Briggs gave a single nod. Pursue. Carla blinked. Sir, if we chase them, we'll be deep into their territory. There's no backup. Briggs' eyes were like cold iron. We are the backup. The order was given. The Valkyrie's engines burned bright, and the lone warship surged forward, leaving the shattered Killzone behind. For the first time in the Orion Corridor's history, it had not stopped an intruder. It had been broken. The Orion corridor was behind them now, a trail of wreckage and drifting hulks glowing in the light of distant suns. But the fight wasn't over. On the USS Valkyrie's bridge, Captain Nathan Briggs stood like a statue as the stars stretched into lines on the forward screen. The ship had chased the surviving VYRKL fleet for over 6 hours, cutting down stragglers one by one. Each kill was precise, surgical, not vengeance, but a message. Now, only a single ship remained, the enemy flagship, still limping forward on half power, its bow shattered, its shields weak. Range, 3 million kilometers, Carla reported, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. They're still running, but at this point, it's just delaying the inevitable. Briggs said nothing for a moment. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the display. He had seen wars before. He had seen what the VYRKL did to worlds that resisted them, the glass cities, the slave camps, the families that never came home. And this was where it stopped. "Bring us within railgun range," he said at last. "Aye, sir." The Valkyrie angled its nose and dove after the crippled dreadnought like a hawk on its prey. On the VYRKL bridge, Commander Ralvek gripped the arms of his command throne. His once pristine crest was singed black from the earlier blast, blood streaked his carapace where shrapnel had grazed him. "Status," he rasped. "Shields at 12%, his officer replied grimly. "Weapons decks 1 through 3 destroyed. Engines at 40%. We cannot outrun them." Ralvek stared at the tactical display. The human ship followed them relentlessly, never falling back, never stopping. Like death itself, it was coming for them. He knew what he had to do. "Signal to all hands," he said. "Prepare to scuttle the ship. If we are to die, we will take them with us." On Valkyrie, alarms pinged. "Sir," Carla said sharply, "they're dumping reactor fuel overloading containment. They're going to blow their core." Briggs didn't flinch. "Helm, bring us to high vector orbit around their stern. Weapons, disable their engines. Now." The railguns fired, their slugs slamming into the dreadnought's aft section. The already weakened drives went critical, venting superheated plasma. The flagship spun, its scuttling attempt disrupted. "They're dead in space," Carla reported. Briggs exhaled slowly. "Hold fire." The order shocked the crew into silence. "Sir?" Carla asked carefully. "Open a channel," Briggs said. The screen flickered. Commander Ralvek appeared, surrounded by smoke and sparking consoles. His crest sagged, but his eyes were defiant. "What do you want, human?" he hissed. "Glory? Revenge?" Briggs stood tall, his shadow long across the bridge. "No," he said simply. "I want you to listen." Ralvek's frills quivered, but he said nothing. Briggs stepped closer to the screen. "You built that corridor to scare us," he said, his voice low, steady. "You wanted to keep humanity penned in. You wanted us to remember that we were small. That we were prey." His tone hardened. "But you forgot something. Humans don't stay in cages. And when you try to break us," he let the words hang. "We break you." Ralvek bared his teeth but said nothing. "You will carry this message," Briggs said, leaning forward. "To your high command. To every admiral, every warlord, every so-called master in your empire." He pointed toward the tactical screen, where the debris of the Killzone still floated behind them like a trail of fire. "Tell them humanity isn't afraid anymore. Tell them we're done being warned. And tell them the next time they raise their guns at us, we won't stop at the corridor." Ralvek's crest lowered. There was nothing left to say. Briggs cut the channel. "Stand down weapons," he ordered quietly. The crew hesitated, then obeyed. The Valkyrie turned away from the crippled flagship, leaving it to drift in silence. Hours later, as the warship crossed back into friendly space, the bridge was quiet. The crew was battered but alive. Carla broke the silence first. "Sir," she said softly, "we could have finished them. Wiped them out completely." Briggs' gaze stayed on the stars. "We already did," he said. The rest is just waiting for the galaxy to realize it. He turned to face the crew. Transmit the battle logs to Fleet Command. I want every human world to know what happened here. I want them to know we stood in the kill zone and survived. Aye, Captain, Carla said, and her voice carried a new kind of weight, pride, sharp and fierce. The crew returned to their stations. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the stars stretched once more as the Valkyrie engaged its jump drive. The great warship vanished into slipspace, leaving behind a corridor full of wreckage, a galaxy full of questions, and a single, unspoken warning that would spread from world to world. A human war vessel has entered the kill zone. And it had not only survived. It had won.